big recruiting weekend coming up. Ohio State has, at least for now, put Friday Night Lights on the side burner. We may see it in July at the end of when we get back into out of the dead period. This will be a big closed barbecue weekend coming up, but it could start off with a big boom. Clark Phillips, talented defensive player, is going to be making his announcement on CBS Sports Online, something like that, 3 o'clock on Friday. Expecting good news for Ohio State.
All right, good stuff. Talking Ohio State football right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Anything on the recruiting front from the rest of you before we move it along?
Nothing too dramatic. This is a big official visit weekend, I think, for Ohio State. And one of the reasons why the Friday Night Lights camp has kind of been put on hold is because the players, the prospects who are on official visits are not allowed to participate in a camp while they are making those visits. So it was kind of hard for them to do visits and a camp at the same time. And really the rule change allowing the prospects to make official visits in the spring and the summer before their senior year is kind of what's precipitated this. As Kevin said, potentially they could do this again in July, when the last weekend in July might be opened up again under NCAA schedule for recruiting to be able to host the camp. But I think that a lot of people are interested to see which prospects make it to campus and if they can add to this already pretty good 2020 class. The last I saw it was ranked 6th in the 247 composite, and see if they can add to it and get into the top 5 and just keep climbing with Ryan Day as the coach.
All right. There are always concerns. Guys leave for the NFL draft. A lot of talent funneling through the program each and every year leaves more star recruits waiting in the wings, but untested, unproven, and maybe unproductive in some of the time that they received last year. So, Tony, if we go to you first in regards to your concerns for this very talented football team heading into 2019, what would rank number one?
Number one for me would be an injury to Justin Fields. I think they're deep enough everywhere else to withstand basic injuries. That position, however, there is such a drop-off between number one and number two, between Justin Fields and, say, Gunnar Hoke or Chris Chuganoff, that the entire offense being not designed around Justin Fields per se, but he is so talented and is capable of so much that it would be a much different offense without him. And with his ability to run the ball, his arm, and his just the intangibles of what he can do, if he's not there, something happens to him. For me, when I think about the pitfalls of this season, that's number one for me. And I don't know what a close second is for me.
No, I'm going to mirror a little bit of what Tony said. Even the coaching staff has mentioned several times that Gunnar Hoke is ready and he's going to battle for this position. And, we've all talked about whether that's coach speak or whether it's actual truth to be spoken. I think that's definitely an underlying concern. But as an Ohio State fan, if we can make it through 2014, knowing that backup quarterbacks can go on and play, I think it was an anomaly, but we'll go ahead and just have faith in that. Other than that, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a concern at this point because I wouldn't say there's an immaturity level or a lack of discipline on this team, but I'm just, I guess, more curious as to see what leadership is going to happen this year because I think this is a really important year for – No, that's really it. I was just mentioning how important leadership is going to be in the grand scheme of things this year. Not, again, necessarily a concern because we don't know that, there's not going to be any, but definitely a lot of guys that are going to need to buy into Ryan Day and drink the Ohio State Kool-Aid in order to really step up into leadership positions. But there'll always be someone who does. They just are going to need a lot of it.
Well, I think there's a lot of questions out there for this team. I mean, it's not a pat hand by any means. I saw one of the writers from 24/7 did a recap of what Phil Steele was writing about Ohio State. I still haven't seen it, haven't gotten a copy in the mail, have been scrounging Barnes & Noble and Kroger every day, and I still don't see it. I don't know. I'm not. Look at these guys. Look at this. Mark, hold yours up, I guess. I mean,
Mine's
what
in
the
my
heck?
car.
Everybody's got it but me. But I know that he had Ohio State like 94th in terms of experience. And, they did lose a few guys off that team last year. And to me, that you have a quarterback who's never really played much other than mop up time at Georgia in a new system. You have a new defense. You have basically a new offensive line, just one guy back on that offensive line. So there's a lot of question marks going into the season. I'm probably still inclined to pick them to win the Big Ten, although it could be with one loss once again. And whether that's going to be good enough to get them in the playoff, over a 2-loss Georgia or whatever else may come down the pike. You got to like how I throw that in there, don't you?
Yeah.
A one-loss Big Ten champion needs to apologize for making the playoff ahead of a 2-loss SEC non-champion. But hey, these are the times that we live in. So what can I say? But I'm still inclined to believe they're going to be there fighting for it at the end.
Kevin, where could the problems be?
Well, there's not a lot of chicken left on the bone. Everybody's picked through everything else at this point.
I got a few.
My answer, but I agree with everything Claire and Steve said. But I'll go with the obvious. First-year head coach with Ryan Day. We really don't know what to expect. I mean, I'm buying what he's selling at this point, but you really don't know until the bullets start flying. Urban Meyer was very intimidating there on the sideline. Teams would see him over there. I mean, it definitely meant something at that point. Ryan Day, kind of an unknown quantity at this point, putting together a new staff. Under Urban Meyer, we definitely saw coaches coming in and coming out, and there were always moments of where's the chemistry going to fit between the coaches? Is everybody's philosophy going to be the same at that point? So I'm going to say, at risk of not taking the Justin Fields or, other positions or the leadership tangent on there, I'm going to say just the fact that as a first-year head coach, just diving into, the toughest division in college football.
Yeah, that's
Urban
something
Meyer
I was also thinking about, Mark, because
sure,
I go back to Steve Cragthorpe at Tulsa, who was really good at Tulsa, and you think he's going to be really good at Louisville, and it was just a complete disaster. And it kind of shows you that, we expect Ryan Day to be good, but sometimes they just aren't, and it's not a good fit, or defense gets ignored, or something, the running game gets ignored. I mean, let's not forget last year was not a good running game. And, is that Ryan Day? Was that the offensive line? So, yeah, I think the first-year coach, that's the biggest unknown of any of it, because we have seen, Justin Fields has been able to stay healthy in what little he's played, and these players have done well, and this has done this. But Ryan Day, we don't know what his program looks like other than, steering Urban Meyer's ship for 3 games and a fall camp last year.
This program has lived in the top 10 since Jim Tressel took over, and Urban Meyer was even able to extend that and stretch it to like a top 2 or 3 almost all the time, and that's taken for granted. Urban Meyer didn't show up at all these jobs, and they weren't ready-made to win 11 and 12 and 13 games, but he turned them into jobs at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State, where he won 11, 12, and 13 games every year. So that's, I think, taken for granted, and it shouldn't be. This is a job that, starting with Woody Hayes, has been an exceptional job. Obviously, he brought the program into modern-day elite status, and it's been maintained for the most part. But there have been stretches of football of 8-4s and 7-5s, or whatever the number of games played at that point. The John Cooper 8-4s and 4-6-1s, and Earl Bruce 6-4-1s. That can happen again, especially in that division. It can happen, and it doesn't take a whole lot of slippage to start losing games like they won in Happy Valley or in Columbus against Penn State in the last 2 years. And in an improving Big Ten Western Division, they're going to run into more situations like they have this year with a Nebraska and a Northwestern that will be pretty good challenges, where in years past they've rolled over those kind of programs. So I think it's taken for granted 91% winning percentage for Urban Meyer, but this is a guy that has a top 3 winning percentage in history. So yeah, is 75% winning percentage kind of the floor for Ohio State? Probably, but there's a big leap between 75% and 91%. You're talking about going from 9-3 most seasons to dominating the Big Ten, basically, is what Urban Meyer did. I know that he slipped up a few times. It cost him some Big Ten championships, but he dominated the conference for 7 years, and that's taken for granted and shouldn't be. My other cause for concerns would be the offensive line in regards to their play against elite pass rushers, just because of the turnover we talked about last week. And when they face certain teams, I think that's going to be a challenge that they're going to have to play up to. And they weren't a mauling offensive line from a run game standpoint last year. And then also the linebackers that we've seen ever since the group with Raekwon McMillan moved on in 2016 has been lost on occasion. You know, they've come up against offenses like Oklahoma. And this is a difficult challenge and maybe an aberration or an outlier, but they just looked lost trying to cover backs out of the backfield and tight ends up the seam, and they just couldn't keep up with them. And for offenses like a Maryland last year, man, they would step up in the hole and they would get juked, and guys were off to the races for 75 and 80 yards against the likes of Oregon State. I need to see better linebacker play both against the run and against the pass.